And that's what I'm hoping that this video is helping to make clear. Different ways that you can show the bully in the co-parenting arrangements, in the child arrangements proceedings, what I'm hoping that professionals can look at and identify the bully as part of the issue of coercive and controlling behaviour. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Survivor Diaries, which is looking at the bully in the co-parenting and in the child arrangements situations. I'll start off with normal disclaimers that I usually do. I am going to be talking about the law in this episode, and so I need to clarify that I'm a solicitor in England and Wales, so if you're outside of that jurisdiction, the law will not apply to you. And I also need to clarify, as I always do, that any advice that I'm giving on these episodes is very general advice, and you should always take legal advice about your own specific situation, if at all possible. I also disclaim that I'm currently using the Freedome Programme model, so I'm disclaiming now that domestic abuse can happen in any family dynamic, to any gender, so any gender can be recipient of abuse and any gender can be the perpetrator of abuse. However, I am also fundamentally a female survivor of domestic abuse, perpetrated by a male abuser, and then I experienced ongoing abuse through the child arrangements proceedings. This particular weekend marks an anniversary for me where I specifically was beaten unconscious. So on the 11th of September 2002, I was beaten unconscious, went away in an ambulance. This is quite a difficult episode for me to be looking at, which is the bully in court proceedings. So the first thing that I want to say about the bully is that it's a very physical thing. Obviously, we're looking at the more obvious things, such as the physical assault. And if you have experienced physical assaults, then evidence-wise, what you need to be doing, if possible, and if it's safe to do so, taking photographs of injuries, speaking to health professionals or to your GP, seek domestic abuse support if you can, and consider speaking to the police as well. So that's a very obvious example of physical abuse. One of the things that happens with children proceedings is that if contact has been happening, the court tends to ignore serious physical abuse, and I don't think that's right. I think it's relevant that the children have been seeing both parents. It's kind of a mistake that I think that people leaving an abusive relationship make. They're so desperately trying to appease the abusive parent that they often agree to contact that they know it isn't safe, just to appease, just for the quiet life, because they're so used to being intimidated and frightened. And the abusive personality is probably already referring to court proceedings, to different ways of shaming them. So, very obvious physical character. The bully is, first of all, we look at all of the physical aspects. So physical assaults, that's the more obvious. And then there are more subtle undertones. And this is why I say that previous violence, even if there has been ongoing child arrangements, is relevant, because it affects the non-abusive parent. It's traumatic to the non-abusive parent, and it affects how they interact with the abusive parent from that point on. It's also a good indicator that the abusive parent will continue to use intimidation, threats, harassment, humiliation to continue their abuse of their victim post-separation and through the child arrangements. So where you see evidence of shaming, evidence of trying to humiliate, evidence of threatening or unpleasant conversation, examples might include not answering questions, silent treatment about the arrangements. These are all things that for a person who has experienced direct physical abuse, or even a person who hasn't, it's still triggering, it's still fueling adrenaline, and that is having a physical effect. I'm going to come on to that a bit more in a second. Keeping with this point, in my humble opinion, there's a not so obvious physical impact of continuing to co-parent with an abuser. And this is something that everybody that I speak to who's trying to co-parent with an abuser says is something that is just so common, and it's just the sight of a text message, the sight of an email, and it's that horrible churned up kind of what is it now, because you know it's going to be something threatening, abusive and intimidating. Let's have a look at this bully character. If you remember in the introduction, we said what the court would expect. Now this is the friend, the person who talks to you, listens to you, is a companion, has a sense of humour, is cheerful. You can discuss the children. It's pleasant, civil at best. Why not have an amicable relationship there? And if you compared that to the bully, and there's a lot of physical, non-verbal indications of intimidation, threat, and you can see it in text messages, you can see it in emails as well if you're looking for it. Directly in person, so at contact handovers, you'll find that the bully is glaring, shouting, smashing things and sulks. Just going through, I'm going to put a link to Pat Craven's The Bully video underneath this video. So I'm hoping that if you have a chance to look at that, you'll see that the bully huffs and puffs, uses silent treatment, shouts, sulks, ignores communication, won't answer, so important communication about the children, especially if they've got the children, won't answer. That's bullying. It causes distress in the recipient, distress in the non-abusive parent. How are the children? Are they okay? This is all leading to this build-up of adrenaline. What else do they do? Okay, so they make gestures. This is something that was raised in a social media question that I asked about how does the bully appear in co-parenting and in child arrangements proceedings. And somebody had said, thinking back to when we were in court more often on a personal level, about how they sit in the waiting room and they take an aggressive posture, an unpleasant, sinister posture. They're kind of smiling with their mouth but not with their eyes, that kind of sinisterness. That is something that the bully will be doing. Outside of the court, at handovers, the bully may be using secret gestures or movements which are intimidating to the non-abusive parent. They may pace up and down. They may go out without saying where they're going or when they're coming back. And if that's with the children, that can be something that again precipitates that anxiety. They drive dangerously, and a lot of parents, non-abusive parents, tell me about how the children quickly got into the car, and then the abusive parent will drive off dangerously or without seat belts on and things like this. And this is actually to scare, to intimidate the non-abusive parent. I hope that what you can see is that I keep referring to this intimidation. So what I'm saying is that the bully continues a physical intimidation. Now, as I want to do in these videos, let's have a look at the law and how this applies in the law. The bully is quite a complicated one because the bully uses intimidation and assault, threats, humiliation or other abuse that is intended to harm, punish or control the non-abusive party. That's the definition at paragraph 3 12J of domestic abuse, and in specifically that's the bit about coercive behaviour. There's an overlap. The bully intimidates us and uses different methods of doing so. It uses different techniques, so it may bully us with a threat to reveal, for example, sexual elements from the relationship to the children. And for those of you who watch these episodes, you'll know that that's something that I talk about and will talk about when we talk about the sexual controller. These are some of the things that I have heard the bully using as techniques. And as legal professionals, if we're looking at the evidence, what we can be looking at is a general intimidatory tone. This is often picked up by Kafkas and seen as just bad blood, bad conflict, bad attitude. Maybe the abusive parent needs to look at their way of communication. In actual fact, there's very often, and if you are experiencing abuse, piece of advice in the last video, always be in writing, so text messages, emails, and then you've got a record of what's said. And the abusive personality will continue to do this through those methods, through those mediums. This is the kind of thing you should evidence to show this general hostility, this intimidation. And you're actually showing that they are intimidating you to do things. So it links with a pattern, intimidating you to agree to arrangements, or you're going to go back to court, for example. That's a classic one. I'm just going to have a quick look and give you some of the examples that have been said to me when I've asked about how the bully appears in co-parenting and proceedings. And what you'll see is that there's a lot of overlap with the other factors, because it all comes down to this basic principle that they're trying to intimidate. Identifying just a few of these different answers: pushing boundaries of court orders, making false allegations against you in court, which uses up your resources to refute, such as drugs and alcohol testing. This is a way of intimidating, putting pressure on the other party, the non-abusive parent. Another person said, classic for me is if you don't do as I say, I'll take you to court or tell social services. I personally relate to that one. So, repeated referrals to social services. And malicious referrals, based on no real reason or evidence or genuine safeguarding concern for the children. Another reply: constant going to social services. There it is again. Controlling via food, not allowing certain things in the child's diet, non-stop court proceedings, saying that the mum, in this particular example, is mentally ill. So saying that the non-abusive parent is mentally ill. Another answer: using court proceedings to further abuse, so the ongoing litigation or threat of litigation. Pushing the limits on orders, so as much as they can get away with and a little bit more outside of the order. Repeatedly making applications, writing to the court for amendments to orders. Unnecessary correspondence with the legal team. This can be something that's raising costs, it can be just an ongoing onslaught of kind of like picking at things, instructing the solicitors to be antagonistic and intimidating in legal correspondence. Further reply, just picking at this one, saying that the non-abusive parent has mental health issues used to discredit anything raised. So that's something else that somebody else brings up. Financial control: if you stop the access to the children because of safeguarding concerns, then they stop the child maintenance. Child maintenance is a legal requirement. It's got nothing to do with the resident parent or the parent with whom the children live with. It's an actual legal priority debt. So that means that you can have attachment to earnings for it, county court judgments, and effectively it's you could go to prison for not paying it. Another answer: saying that I had mental health problems, threatening to report me to the police for mortgage fraud, and telling me that I'd never be able to work in finance again. So this is somebody, obviously they're using threats, intimidation about the person's work. Reporting to social services, says this same person again. Another person, the way he uses maintenance payments as a form of control. If the court order suggests that arrangements are flexible where possible for the children, so he thinks that he can do what he wants, and then when I don't agree, I get all kinds of abusive messages criticising my parents. So the abuse of that clause that's usually in child arrangements orders, which says any other agreements any other arrangements as can be agreed between the parties. And that's commonly open to abuse. You'll see that there's one party demanding a flexibility about that, but then as soon as it's wanted in reverse by the non-abusive parent, there's this adherence to the order. The rules of the game change in that respect. Another person says swinging between accusations and silent treatment, pushing boundaries of undertakings, veiled threats, gaslighting attempts. And here's the one that referred to actually when you're in person in the court. Okay, so appears at court with a mob of legal advisors and other family members in the court open plan waiting area, sitting themselves, trying to position themselves to be very visible so they can stare and watch, and that's where you see the body language, the intimidating body language in the courtroom, in the court waiting area itself. I'll just mention that if you are experiencing domestic abuse, you can request separate waiting rooms are provided at the court if you are in person. Just finally, using the element of shock and betrayal, submitting lies in the form of statements, and then undermining and intimidating. Controlling the former family home and preventing access to pets, belongings, threatening to destroy them, using this as blackmail in proceedings to get what they wanted. And I'm just going to quickly flash up another example. You can see in a text message here, write to the court, saying that you've changed your mind, was words along that effect. I haven't actually got it in front of me. And you can see how there's pressure being applied in these messages to write to the court to say that I've changed my mind about an order, and otherwise then it's going to be revealed to our daughter, things from the past. So what we're saying here is that the bully continues using intimidation. It's a vital thing to show as part of coercive and controlling behaviour. The coercion, trying to get the other party to do something on their terms, basically, is what you're looking for. I've seen people in comments on social media just saying about these videos and about how it would be coaching people to gather evidence, and I'll just quickly say why I think that that's absolute nonsense. The evidence is either there or it's not there. I've just released a video today. We don't make up allegations of domestic abuse. That's one of the pet hates of mine. Don't exaggerate allegations of domestic abuse. And if an allegation of domestic abuse, if you're responding to it, then I strongly encourage personal reflection on that. And then, of course, if an allegation is false, then you have to defend that. You have to show evidence to show that that's false. Could I be coaching people? As I said, the evidence is there or it's not there. If a person is being the friend, that thing that the court are looking for, so they talk to you about the children, they listen to you, they're a companion, you can discuss problems that you've got together, they've got a sense of humour and they're cheerful. No intimidation there, nothing like that. No gruff anger, no short responses, no silent treatment. You've got a friendly, genuine person, and who wouldn't want to co-parent with that person? Then there's going to be no evidence, is there, of these things that I'm describing in this video. However, if you are a person who knows that you wait to respond if you've got the children because that will cause fear and intimidation to the other parent, then that is something you could be looking at this video and saying, well, I better not do that anymore then. And I'm waiting to see the downside of that. I'm waiting to see the problem with that. So look through sections 1, 2 and 3 to see how at section 3, the effect on children, witnessing any of the above, witnessing this hostility, witnessing the anxiety and the trauma that this kind of interaction, forced interaction with the abusive co-parent can cause. And I've mentioned that trauma, as I said at the beginning of this video. This episode to me is difficult to write this weekend because I'm looking at very physical things and because I have got experience of that serious physical abuse. If you followed the channel from the start, you'll know that the channel was born, if you like, from being very ill and a diagnosis of complex PTSD at the time, which was in part as a result of those events in 2002. That PTSD is caused by the constant stress, the distress of having to deal with this intimidating, coercive, abusive co-parent who uses the children to continue that intimidation, control and punishment of the non-abusive parent throughout the child arrangements proceedings. So I was able to see how that had impacted on me, obviously impacted on me as a mother, and most tragically, of course, that impacts on our daughter. Quite honestly, even though there's been nothing really since 2009 and court proceedings confirming the findings of domestic abuse, confirming that this incident in 2002 occurred, the no contact medical and therapeutic intervention, I know I'm speaking from a healthier and a better place than I was. However, I'm still recording this episode, my palms are sweating, because any kind of talking about the bully can be re-traumatising to the person who's been subjected to that kind of abuse. And I'm asking the court not to change the way that they look. Of course, if there's been contact between the parents post these physical incidents, then there is contact established. I understand that. I'm just saying, don't dismiss those historical physical incidents, because they will have an ongoing impact, an ongoing post-trauma. I am, in quite honesty, still traumatised every September when the nights start to draw in. But what I do see is I'm better than I was. We need the courts to see how the bully not only uses physical violence, but ongoing intimidation, threats, humiliation and other abuse used to harm, punish and frighten the victim or the non-abusive parent after separation. And that's what I'm hoping that this video is helping to make clear, different ways that you can show the bully in the co-parenting arrangements, in the child arrangements proceedings, what I'm hoping that professionals can look at and identify the bully as part of the issue of coercive and controlling behaviour. So I hope that's been useful. Just in summary, I've looked at a very physical effect of the bully in court proceedings and in co-parenting. There's the direct physical effect of physical assaults that I want the court to be mindful of. And there is the ongoing physical effect of being under constant stress. I'm quickly going to flash up a book that I'm looking at the moment, which is that the body keeps the score. I hope I've got that right. And this is an excellent book looking at how trauma affects the body and the mind, permanently having a physical effect. Can post-traumatic stress be seen as a psychological harm caused by domestic abuse? My experience in court proceedings is that it can. I hope that's been useful. Obviously, I'll see you, hopefully, in the next episode, which will be looking at the next stage of Pat Craven's Dominator in the co-parenting arrangements and in the child arrangements proceedings themselves. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.